Now, we've talked a bit about what a successful team looks like. Okay, we've talked about this idea that a successful team has direction, it has good leadership, it has all of these kinds of things. But one of the things we haven't talked about is the fact that teams change over time. And it's a really kind of, and it varies, each team varies, but there's a process that teams go through. And understanding this process is really important because what you need to realize is that teams go through these different stages, some of which are lots of fun and others just plain hurt. Okay, so understanding what the team process is, the process of a team development is, will really help you to kind of go, you know what, this is difficult, but we're going to get to the other end of it. So there's been a bunch of research on this idea around the process that a team goes through when they first get together through to successfully achieving their objective and even including, okay, closing. This team is now closed, we've finished, we've achieved our objectives. And so this is what I want to quickly walk you through. So the first stage of team development is referred to as forming. Now, I want you to think of this as kind of like buying a new car. Okay, so we've got this new car. The new car is our team. And what we need to realize is that it's new, right? This is not just, it doesn't just work straight away. It's actually new. And there's a few things we need to understand. So really, when you get a new car, you don't get it for no reason. This new car, your team, you're trying to understand the objectives. Ever been in a team where you thought, my goodness, what on earth are we trying to achieve here? So part of a new team, part of this forming stage is about understanding the objectives. The second thing to think about is really, it's you're thinking about the ground rules. Okay, how does this team work? Where will this team take us? Is this a four-wheel drive? Okay, do we have the clearance? Okay, what are the rules about how we work with one another? What are the rules around the organization? All of that kind of thing. So it's quite normal in the forming stage to feel like an idiot, to be honest, because you're just starting to understand and grapple with what the ground rules are. And then something else that's really important that's going on, and you may or may not like this, but you've also got a driver, and this driver is the leader. And so part of what you're trying to do in the forming stage of a team is to develop a relationship with the leader. And that's not necessarily a one-on-one kind of, we need to be buddy-buddy, but to get an understanding of who the leader is, how they interact, how you interact with them, what they expect of you, all of those kind of messy things about engaging with the leader. So the forming stage, you're kind of going to feel like you're swimming in mud a little bit because you're just trying to get to know one another. You're a little bit unsure of what's going on. You're a little bit careful because you don't understand necessarily the objectives. You don't understand the ground rules, and you don't understand what the leader is expecting of you. So this is it's a really exciting stage of a team, but it can be a really, really tricky stage. And it's okay to give yourself a bit of a break and say, look, this is a bit messy. Okay, so we're going to let's just relax a bit and get a sense of who we are. Really, really important. Now, it shouldn't come as any surprise to you, but the next stage of team development is storming. Now, as you can imagine, in the storming phase, this is not, you've started to get a sense in the forming stage of who the people are. Then you start to realize that you hate them. Okay, that might be a bit extreme. You don't hate them, but you start to realize what the differences are. And so you also start to feel a little more confident. So we've all been in a meeting where we go, oh, geez, I don't like that, but we haven't said anything because we're still getting to know them. Okay, we're being polite in that first stage. In the second stage, sometimes the politeness is just kind of gone, right? So in the storming phase, and it's really, really important, this isn't something to be avoided. In fact, when you're developing a team, the last thing in the world you want is to avoid this storming phase where it's perfectly okay to say, look, you know what? I don't agree, okay? And this storming phase is really important because through this, you can start to get to the next stage. If you constantly ignore what you disagree on, then you're going to have problems in the next stage. So the storming phase, not a lot of fun, particularly for the leader, okay? This can be really challenging for the person who's leading the group, but it's really, really important. So we have more disagreements. We get cranky with one another. We start to question whether we really want to be on this team, okay? But as a result of doing this, we start to identify where the differences lie. Now we get through that, we don't focus entirely on the differences for the whole time, but we go, you know what? We're working on this team and you and I, we disagree on things. And it's only through acknowledging that we disagree on things that you can actually go, you know what? This is the thing that we agree on. And that's in the next phase. So the storming phase is really important, but it hurts. It also requires you to put your ego away a little bit and listen, okay? So when we step into an argument and we go, I want to get my point across, then we don't listen. We have no hope of getting through the storming phase. We actually need to go, you know what? Let's have this argument. Let me understand exactly what it is that we disagree on. Let me understand your point of view, and then you'll get through the storming phase. Storming phase, not a lot of fun necessarily. Some people like a fight, but really, really, really important. Now, you'll be glad to know, after the storm has passed, is what is referred to as the norming phase. Now, if you think about norming as really coming together, a machine starting to come together. So initially, you know, maybe the gears were grinding, but now in the norming phase, things start to pull together. So in the norming phase, you're starting to become a well-oiled machine. So you've gone through that process of identifying where the gaps are, but now you're starting to kind of become more comfortable with those differences. Have you ever had that experience of having an argument with someone and thinking, oh my goodness, I hate them. You know, we disagree on this thing, but then later on going and doing something else that wasn't in the disagreement area and going, oh my goodness, we've got this, you know, there's some real opportunity here in our differences. And that's what the norming phase is about. It's about kind of really pulling together as a team. You start to feel freer to express your differences without being attacked, right? In the storming phase, you're just kind of learning to have an argument. But in the norming phase, you're going, you know what? I think we disagree, but let's unpack that. Let's have a conversation about what we disagree on and see how this fits together. Maybe we don't actually disagree as much as we thought. The roles become established. So some people, each person has a different approach to doing life and doing teamwork. And I guess in this norming phase, these roles start to become established. And even the official roles, the leadership role, the leader might become a stronger leader in this period. But those roles, you know, you're starting to turn into a well-oiled machine that fits together, where all of the cogs fit together and everybody plays their role. It's during this phase that people start saying, hey, such and such, tell us what you think. Because that person might not talk a lot, but others who talk too much start to realize, you know what, when they talk, they actually have the most valuable thing to say. So in this norming phase, you're really pulling together. And they become a stronger entity. So in the norming phase, you stop thinking, oh my goodness, why on earth have I joined this team? And you start thinking, wow, we. You know, so it's not I'm on a team, it's we are a team. Okay, it's a really, really exciting kind of phase because you start to realize the potential of being in a group of like-minded but different people. Okay, and the diversity that sits in that group is actually one of the strongest characteristics of teamwork in itself. So norming phase, things are starting to come together. You can breathe a sigh of relief in norming phase. Now, some of you will start to recognize that perhaps you've been in teams that never got here, okay? That avoided the storming, that avoided articulating what you disagreed on, and it meant that they never got to the point where you could kind of pull together as a group. That's why the storming phase is so important. Now, the next stage is where the rubber hits the road. The next stage is the performing stage. Okay, we're at the performing stage. This is where the rubber hits the road. You've gone through the forming stage. You've pulled the band members together. You've got the car. You have a vague idea of where you're going. And then you've gone into the norming stage, the storming stage, sorry, not the norming stage, the storming stage where you realize that maybe you don't like the guitarist and you disagree on these different things. But through that, you've acknowledged your differences, and through that, you've gotten to your norming stage where you go, yep, we're different, but we agree on the objective, we have a clear picture of where we're going. Now, the performing stage is about where you start to become effective. And some of you are thinking, oh my goodness, we've got to go through 3 stages before we achieve anything. Yes, you do. Teamwork is hard, okay? Teamwork is difficult. We have to go through this process in order to do something amazing and change the world a little bit. Okay, now in the performing stage, the group becomes far more effective at working together. That well-oiled machine starts to take their practices out into the world to do the thing that they've set out to do. Okay? They become more effective at problem solving, but also more effective at taking advantage of the differences and the diversity that sits in the room. Okay? There is no point having 4 guitarists and no drummers. Okay? This is the point at which they go, yep, the drummer, he's not a good guitarist, but he's great with rhythm. So let's leave him on the drums. Let's refer to him for drums. We'll let him lead the drums bit. Exactly the same in your team. In the performing stage, you really start to kind of hone these expertise and defer to one another and draw on that diversity. And the roles also become a bit more flexible, okay, to suit the task. So you might have a number of tasks in your team, but you go, okay, well, normally this person over here leads this process, but hey, I think we're actually a solid team. I reckon, James, you can actually lead this process. Okay, so it really becomes about achieving the thing that you're achieving. So the performing stage is where success starts to happen, particularly when you've done the other stuff well. You actually start to see outcomes from all of your hard work. Okay, the rest really is groundwork, and it's really important. Performing stage is where you actually start to achieve something. This is where you get to celebrate. You know, the final stage of teamwork is the one that we often ignore, and to our peril. So if we think teamwork is about achieving objectives, but often teamwork, the team comes to the end of its life, and it's called adjourning. It's actually really, really important to consider the possibility that your team will come to a close. It's not to say that you won't work together again, but it's to say that there is sometimes the end of the story in teamwork. Okay, so if you've gotten your team together around a specific objective, right? You've gotten together to decide that you're going to run a big Christmas celebration, okay? It's perfectly okay, and you should plan for it to say, okay, we're going to work through this process, our team is going to go through these stages, but then rather than making our team try and live forever, we're better off to close it, okay, at the end. So it's where we go, where we celebrate what we've achieved, and we go, okay, that's the end of that, and then I look forward to the next time. Because you might have organised a Christmas event in the first team, and you may well want to work with the same people again, but maybe you've actually got another idea that's to do with, I don't know, food for the homeless or something, and you might grab some of the same people, but you might also grab some different people. So that's one issue, is if you don't adjourn, then you've got to keep all of the same people. And that's not about getting rid of bad people necessarily, but it's just about skill sets and the kind of people that you want to get together. But also, the team is formed around the objective. So remember, part of that forming stage is about going, where are we going? You know, what are we doing? And sometimes you actually need to go through that process again around a different objectives. Okay, so having a plan that says we're going to form a team around this project. We're going to go through these different stages. Yep, it's going to hurt in the middle, but then we're going to achieve things, and we're going to build really good relationships in the middle of it. And then we're going to get to the end of it and celebrate it. That's all. That's what we've done. And we're going to go, thank you. And then we're going to close it. Because then it provides the opportunity to sit down and go, okay, what do we want to achieve next? How do we pull together a team to do that? So this adjourning phase, it's not like killing off your relatives. It's about saying, okay, we've finished that project. Let's call that book closed, and then we'll get to write a new book. But if you don't adjourn, often you'll take one team and you'll try and do 16 different things with them and never kind of renegotiate how that fits together. Okay, so adjourning, really, really important. Doesn't always happen, but it's well worth considering, is this team designed specifically for this purpose? In which case, it should adjourn. It should close at some point, even if it's going to reopen again after a break. Okay, so adjourn and then come back and work out what you're going to try and achieve. So you start to get an understanding of why the process of developing and working in a team is really important. If you think that you're going to step into a team and it's going to be perfect straight away, you're deluding yourself. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so remembering and knowing this process actually helps you go, you know what, yep, we're storming at the moment, but that's okay because what comes next is actually really good. So let's work our way through this. So just as a quick recap, we've got forming. Basically that fun bit where everybody loves one another and we're slowly working this stuff out. Okay, we're getting together, we're starting to understand the objectives. Then the clouds arise because we realize that we don't necessarily like everybody in the room and we certainly don't agree with them all. Okay? Storming. Lots of teams fall apart here, either by killing one another or by avoiding it and just going, oh, well, we don't talk about things we disagree with. And I've seen that plenty of times in teams where they haven't got the guts to say, you know what, let's talk this through. Let's understand exactly what we disagree with. Then, if you manage to get through that phase, you've got this lovely norming stage. You go, you know what, we disagree, but geez, we agree on a lot. Okay? And that's where things start to come together. And then, performing. You are the rock band. You are changing the world. I've heard some great outcomes from teams that have gotten to this point where they're kind of going, yep, we're actually achieving the objectives that we set out to achieve. And we're doing it with people that while we don't agree with them all the time, we know that we agree on a lot, right? And then the stage that we often forget about is adjourning. There is a time where you need to kind of say, okay, we've done this process, we've achieved our objectives, let's close this, and then we can have a new and fresh conversation about the next project. So then you can actually pull the people together again and go through this process. And over time, working with the same people or having a few people who've been through this process, this bit actually becomes less of a nightmare. Okay? So having an understanding of this helps you to understand the things that are going on in your team, but it also, I encourage you to pay attention to it, because if you feel like things are getting tense, lean into it. Don't go, oh my goodness, we need to get out of this, everybody disagrees. Actually go, okay, what is it that we disagree on? You know, we have respect for one another here. What is it? Let's articulate it really carefully, okay? And that process can really help you to move through to the next stage. So forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, it's not a hard and fast rule, but you will find aspects of these stages in the development of your team, and you need to work through all of these different kind of ideas in order to get to the point that you're achieving your objectives. So I hope this has been useful. I certainly know this framework is really useful for the teamwork that I'm engaged with and the teams that I work with, and just really good to keep in the back of your mind. Thanks.